The English word community originally came from Latin, the Latin word communis, which means public spirits that can be shared in common. The concept of community became more popular in Europe in the early 19th century and has evolved since then. And in nowadays dictionary, the meaning of community is defined as any group united by interpersonal relationships where the members know and recognize the others, and they often share the same common value or interests. We all know that communities are extremely powerful. They empower us to do things that we can't do by ourselves, and also allow us to support one another and turn to each other for help. In the past, though, we would have to be physically there in order for communities to work, be it your interest groups at school, or your fellowships in church, or just your neighbor gang. You have to be physically there in order to build that community. However, technology has actually fundamentally changed the way that we can build communities. And internet especially has made that breakthrough. It actually brought people from 1,000 miles apart together. It will actually create communities that we have never thought possible before. So first started off with emails, and then forums, and then nowadays with social media networks. And technologies continue to evolve. The way we engage with our social media platforms have been very similar to like a public town square, where you go in and then you meet people that you know, you go into the town square and also meet new people, get new ideas, get new content, and it gives people a voice more broadly. However, with the growth of private messaging, a lot of the conversations amongst communities have actually shifted to more private, encrypted services. And that's very similar to the conversations that are happening in your living room. It's a lot more cozy, it's a lot more private. Now, this doesn't mean that the latter will completely replace the former. It just means that the future of communities will continue to evolve, and that there will be a natural shift between the town square type of engagement versus the living room type of engagement, depending on the types of communities and depending on the occasions. Now, in 1990, playwrights, poets, and scientists have proposed that everyone on this planet is connected to one another by a total of 6 people. That's 1990. Now today, I don't need to tell you that each person is connected on an average to 2 people. So that's the 2 degrees of separation we're talking about. And the world is more connected than we think. And the communities that can be built is also far beyond our imagination. Over the last 15 years, Facebook has evolved from what we know as a small local community in Harvard, a group of Harvard University students, thanks to Mr. Mark Zuckerberg, and would never have thought that this has now grown into a community that are connecting people around the world with more than 2.8 billion people. The geographical boundaries are actually blurring between different parts of the world. The way we build communities are no longer constrained by distance or proximity. What was once impossible is now our everyday life. We are all part of a global community. I, for example, am now able to connect with a very special group of people, a community of divers around the world from different countries, experts in diving. This is a group which posts nothing but scuba diving accidents. Now, call me paranoid, but this is important for me because this is how I learn to have high alerts for safety measures when going underwater. So I'll tell you a little story about my diving accident, and you'll see why this is important. So on one sunny, bright day in Malta, I was with my husband and my friends, and we decided to go on a dive, just a casual dive out of a 7-day vacation there. Very excited, we were following our dive guides, and the dive guide was supposed to be 5 meters underneath us, and so we followed. Before we knew it, we just lost sight of her. We searched, we looked around, and in several failed attempts to locate her, we decided that it's probably time to surface. So we did. We surfaced up, only to find that we were actually in the middle of the big ocean, Mediterranean Sea in Malta. So that was quite a scary feeling, but the lucky thing is that I learned from our scuba diving accidents group that number one, we have to keep swimming, because if not, we'll be swept away into the big ocean, we can't be found, and we could die. And the other thing that I remember is also that we can't swim to the cliff that was just right beside us, because the waves and the currents would just throw us out into the cliff and would knock us out, and we could die. And then the other thing we remember is that we have to dump all our weight belts, we have to stay calm, because if we become paranoid and also make silly or deadly mistakes, we could die. So luckily, we didn't, and that's why I'm still here. And the interesting thing is that eventually, we actually got rescued by the Malta Marine Forces. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this is my first on any marine ship, and hopefully my last as well, and I hope that you don't have to go through the same experience. But the story here is really about how you never really know when something that you learn from a global community, that you have these conversations about safety, about diving, that will actually help save my life one day. That's the power of communities. Who would have thought? So when we are all here to think about future of communities, we have to bear in mind all those implications. And while every year the world are getting more connected and it's definitely positive trends, we also have to remember not to leave people behind. I believe what we can do is to develop social infrastructure, to give people the power to build global communities that work for everyone. And it should include these 5 key pillars: supportive communities, safe communities, informed communities, civically engaged communities, and inclusive communities. First off, supportive communities. It is important so as to strengthen the traditional institutions in the world where membership in these institutions is actually declining. Whether they are your hobby groups, or whether they are the sports team, or health groups, associations, they all share important roles in the social infrastructure. Just like my case with the scuba diving accident group, it helps save my life. And the online communities can also strengthen existing physical communities by bringing people into online as well as offline. The Ice Bucket Challenge, I thought, was a great example of how supportive communities work. I don't know if any one of you remember or have participated. I actually remember that I had 0 knowledge about ALS at that time, before the challenge. And I got to know about ALS, the disease, really through the challenge, and I also supported the cause through participating in the activities with my friends, with my colleagues, with my community. I think it was one of the most, if not the most, successful fundraising campaign ever in history. And it's also not just about the fundraising part. It's about the awareness that people bring to ALS as a disease, and that it actually brings the awareness across the globe without boundaries. So a lot of times these communities provide a purpose and support, and also a special sense of belonging for people involved. Safe community. I think safe community is fundamental to any social infrastructure, whether it's for now or for the future. Problems like natural disease, or natural disasters, or disease, or refugees, crises, or climate change, none of these can be solved by any nation alone. These all need coordinated responses from a worldwide vantage point. One virus from one nation could spread to the other nation, or something happens in pollution in one place could actually spread to everywhere in the world. Humanity's current infrastructure are insufficient to address these issues. And it is also especially important that during crisis, people get the help that they need. It could be either in the form of informing your loved ones that you're okay after a typhoon, or contributing to a cause by donating and helping with a rebuild after a crisis, or simply showing up to help those that are in need when they're feeling down. Ultimately, we need people in the community to feel safe and to feel supported and get the help when needed. And looking into the future, I think we need even more social infrastructure to help inform the communities to prevent problems before the problems even happen. And this could be in the areas of, and very helpful especially for the areas around suicide prevention. We will be successful if we can help people look out for one another and also provide community tools that can help save lives. Moving on to informed community. I think you all agree that the importance of an online community is all about idea sharing, also about embracing diverse perspectives, that people have the complete picture rather than just an alternate perspectives. Compared with getting news from TV or from newspapers who have a consistent editorial views, online communities already provide more diverse content. However, we must still build for a future that would mitigate polarization, that would mitigate sensationalism, which is a risk in losing a common understanding. So to achieve this, it's important that people have the power to share their views and also be acquiring accurate information. Fact-checking might be a good start, but it's not the ultimate solution. We need it's in everyone's hands to learn to be digital literate. And what's more important is that we need everyone around us to also be digital literate. And it's only by doing so that we can truly form an informed community. Civically engaged community is to encourage engagement in existing political system. Now, if we want to change the world, if we want to change the system, there's no better way than getting civically engaged communities to be involved. And in times of election, it's that much more important that there's a high voter turnout and that there's also conversations happening between people and their potential representatives. Ultimately, I believe that dialogues are crucial, and the future lies in whether we're successful in building the dialogues. Last but not least, when building an inclusive community, I think it's key that everyone feels respected and being included. And that's why the social infrastructure that we need to build for the future should tolerate no bullying, no harassment. And it also takes the communities to support this. And not just to support this, but also to practice this. Increasingly, more internet companies like Facebook would put all these integrating all these bullying prevention and outreach resources into the heart of the product, and also building partnerships with local institutions to promote about this in the society. And a set of community standards are really important to allow communities to really operate and function effectively. Some universal values such as no hate speech, no bullying, no promotion of violence, protection of people's privacies, etc. These are important values, important governing principles. And at the end of the day, we want people in the community to feel free to share and connect, and they will only do so by feeling safe and feeling respected. So that's a wrap on the 5 key pillars that I see in the future of communities. Once again, supportive communities where people are provided a purpose and will support one another. Safe communities where people are feeling safe and get the help they need. Informed communities where we are all digital literate. Civically engaged communities where we are all actively engaged in issues. And finally, inclusive communities where everyone feels included and we're operating with a collective set of values and principles. In times of difficulty, it is that much more important for us to think about these social infrastructures, because that defines the future that we'd like to engage with our community. So there are many of us who stand for connecting people, bringing people together, and connecting the world. And I hope we have the focus to look for the long game. We want to build the future together, and we want to build this new social infrastructure and create the world that we want for generations to come, for Hong Kong, and for the world. Thank you.